Well, hello there, and welcome back to the Business of Becoming podcast. I'm your host, Lori Kennedy, and this is episode number 32. When Dr. Stephanie and I were talking about this episode, we had a really good laugh because it seems odd that so many of us are so scared just to be ourselves when it comes to our brand and our business. It's like we have to hide our geekiness, our quirks, and our true nature in order to appear professional and credible. Well, being professional and credible without your personality is boring and frankly doesn't do anything to help you grow your practice. So as you'll learn in this episode, you can be extremely smart, very professional, and be authentically yourself. What a relief, right? In fact, Dr. Stephanie shares how incorporating her personality into her practice has helped her to grow it and also set herself apart. We talk about some books and some other good things on this show, which can be found over on the show notes at thewbh.com/32. Dr. Stephanie is a big-hearted, passionate, functional neurologist, chiropractor, and international speaker. She's an expert on the neurology benefits of fasting, nutritional healing, and functional movement. She's been in private practice for 16 years where she helps people unleash their superpowers at the Health Loft. She has a long-standing love of languages, dancing, and quirky jokes. She is hilarious, and you will see. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Stephanie to the show, or shall I just call her Wonder Woman? Hey, Stephanie. So excited to have you here today. How are you?
I'm really great. Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation because one of the common themes that we talk a lot about in my community is this idea of being afraid to be who we are and not wanting to come across, especially for those of you listening who are licensed and regulated, not wanting to inject your personality for fear of not being looked at as professional.
Right.
And I know for you, that has actually been the change maker that has set you apart from, your professional designation. And that's what's actually helped you to really grow your practice. So before we dive into this, why don't we just go back? You can share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I've been in practice in Toronto going on my 16th year. I'm a proud graduate of 2003. And so I'm a chiropractor, licensed as a chiropractor. And what I have found is over the course of time, my love in chiropractic has really expanded. Like when I first graduated, like most graduates, new, doctors in practice, I was very much to the letter in terms of what my teachers in school had taught me. And I was very much wearing the dress shirt with the blazer and or even worse, the white coat with my name, like Dr. Stephanie Estima embroidered on it. And what I have found over time is there's really no distinction between Dr. Stephanie and Stephanie, the human being. So I'm obsessed with functional neurology, brain health, and how the knock-on effects of not caring for our brains, in particular our frontal lobes, can have knock-on effects to, end organs and, metabolic issues and adrenals and thyroids and digestive issues, sex hormone, like all the things that can kind of come from having a brain that is unhealthy, and how we can apply those principles in practice. So, very much within the scope of chiropractic, but I think the way that we have evolved, the way that the clinic has evolved, and the way that my team has evolved is to really try to take more of a lighthearted, often quirky approach to health, because that's who we are. We are all, I often call my team members and the associate doctors that I have working alongside me, like we're all aliens, and we've kind of just we're all like on a blue planet and we're all red, and we finally like found the other red person. So we are all, kind of together, and we all look at health and healing in a certain way, which is a bit of a divergence from kind of classic pain-based therapy. We address pain, of course, but we also kind of expand on like long-term, like playing the long game with people's health. But where I think we really shine is really taking a lighthearted approach to care, because that's, health shouldn't be laborious. It shouldn't be like, oh, frig, I got to go to the chiropractor again, or, oh my God, I got to do my rehab exercises. Like, it really should be light and fun. So we try to inject some of the things that I really love to do every day into the practice. So we have riddles, we have jokes, we have puzzles with toothpicks, kind of lying around the practice for people to do. We have just fun and quirky tools that really help us achieve what we're trying to do, which is like kind of sneak in the mindset and like educate people on some really basic pillars of health, but not doing it in such a stuffy, like, I'm the chiropractor, I'm the doctor, you're the patient. It's like it's more of a human to human kind of interaction, which I think is far more effective in the long term, but it's also staying in integrity with who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we know each other personally, and so I'm able to get, the behind the scenes view of who you are as a person, but also within your practice. And I know that a lot of people, I speak with a lot, hundreds, thousands of licensed healthcare providers who are so afraid to meld who they are as a person into their practice for whatever reason. Maybe it's that they don't want to seem unprofessional. Maybe it's they're afraid to go against the norm. Maybe they don't want to be like shunned by their counterparts or whatever the case may be. And we were chatting that in this day and age, especially with all of the abundance of healthcare, I at least sort of feel unless you're willing to do that, you become a dime a dozen. Like, there's tons of naturopaths, there's tons of chiros, there's tons of trainers, there's tons of health coaches and nutritionists. So it's like, what sets people apart and what attracts all of the patients to you is really who you are. So why do you think it is that so many licensed or unregulated health professionals are so afraid to be who they are in their business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it comes from a bunch of different places. One, I think like having gone through chiropractic school, I think it's drilled into you that you are a doctor and there's a certain way that a doctor looks and acts and speaks. And when we are in clinic, there's a certain attire that we are asked to adhere to. And I think that there's just a social schema in terms of what a doctor looks like. Naturopath or chiropractor or what have you is sort of a middle-aged graying male with, button-up shirt and the white the white coat. And of course, doctors like that exist. And if that's who you are, like, awesome. That's not who I am. I am the, Lululemon wearing, I have energetic rings on me at any given time. And I love big earrings and, that's just who I am. And, I think that when you have the courage to be yourself, that, that vibe attracts your tribe, right? Like you get people that come in because they've resonated with your message or who you are or what you stand for or what you believe in, and they want more of you. And those are actually the best patients to work with, the ones that you are like, frig, I love this girl. Like I want her or this guy or whatever. And I want to help this person. I want to go the extra step versus the person that comes in and they're completely, there's that complete disconnect, right? Like we all, as much as we shouldn't admit, we all have our favorites in practice, right? And those favorite patients or clients tend to be the ones that resonate with who we are most closely. So I think that in fact, it's almost a disservice because the other aliens that you could be helping, you're not finding them because you're not stepping into who you really are. And, as long as you come from a place of love and, wanting to serve people, you can't go wrong. You are only better serving the community of people who need to be served because there's only, and I know this maybe sound a bit like, maybe it's a bit woo-woo or a bit airy-fairy, but there's only one you, and there's only, like, I can take really complex, information in terms of like neurology and pathways and whatever, and I could talk to people about that. But, if that's not resonating with people, then what's the point, right? But if I can talk to people about mindset, and maybe if we journal in the evening, that'll help your neurophysiology a little bit and help you get a better sleep. Like if I can, take complex concepts and apply it and talk about it in a way that resonates with the patient or the community that I'm trying to, impact, then that's how you make a big impact on your patient base or on your community, by being who you are and speaking their language. Because there's like nothing worse than going to a doctor and they're speaking like, they're using all the sciencey words and they're using all the big stuff, and maybe they feel, busy and important, but it's not really making an impact on the patient. So really trying to, step into who you are and being able to meet the patient where they are, which is usually where you are, I think really, best serves your people and your patient base.
What are some of the things that you do in your life, in your private life, in your home life, that you've brought into your clinical practice that maybe at first you were nervous or held back because you weren't sure how your patient base would take it, but you've seen that, in fact, it is so critical for you to inject not only your rituals and behaviors, but bring in that human element as well?
Such a good question. I think probably there's a couple of things that I tend to speak about a lot in the practice. One is mindset. The other is rituals and habits. So one of the things that I've been doing now with my partner Giovanni for I don't know how many years now, we fill out gratitude journals in the morning, and then I also will write in my gratitude journal in the evening. So couple like super quick, for all the chiros and naturopathic, nerds out there, like the neurophysiology of that is that it brings you into your prefrontal cortex, and we can activate and access the dopaminergic and serotonergic pathways there. But when you do it right in the beginning of the day, right, it sets you up for being proactive rather than, picking up your phone and looking at, the news and looking at the next thing that Donald Trump has done and what mass shooting has happened and whatever, things you have absolutely no control over, but your physiology will change, right? You become reactive, you're heartbroken for, whatever reason. So gratitude in the morning is super important. And then gratitude in the evening is also really, really important as well, especially for women, because women are, if you're a chiropractor or naturopath or, some sort of health professional listening, you are running a business. You're probably a partner, or, maybe you have like a relationship, or maybe you're a mom, or maybe you're all three of those things. So you're always working. You never really get to be like, okay, yeah, 5 o'clock, I get to shut down now, because you come home from practice and then you maybe you cook a meal for your family, and then you're a wife or you're a partner, or what, however that looks for you. So I started talking about mindset. I've been talking about mindset for a while, but I find that when we talk about it with patients, they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah." And we actually have journals in the clinic for people to take home and for personal use. But that's a really big thing that we talk about. The other, actually, I was talking about this with a patient today. We were talking about like negative self-talk, just on the topic of mindset. And I told her this was a piece of advice that was given to me by one of my mentors, and my mentor had said to me, every time you have like a negative thought about yourself, like, Stephanie, you're not good enough, not worthy enough, not whatever enough, like put a little elastic band around your wrist and then just like pull it. Like every time you just like, you're conscious of it. So I gave that piece of advice to my patient today, who was saying, I just feel like I just can't get out of this rut of like, I have all these constant, like this negative self-talk. So I will often bring in things that I'm doing myself or that I've experimented with myself with my patients that have worked. I'm like the ultimate, like I always experiment on, like health things on myself first. And then I will bring those things in to the practice, because my number one goal is to get my patient better. So I don't give a bleep. If it is like the rubber band is going to help my patient start thinking more positively about herself, or just to get her more conscious or more awake to the fact that she has this like internal dialogue all the time, or it's the chiropractic adjustment, or it's the journaling. I don't care what it is. I just want to get her better. So there's that. And then I also work on, like for my personal relationship, I work on the relationship as well as being in it, right? Which is also, an entrepreneurial kind of best practice, right? We always, as chiropractors or doctors or whatever, we're working in the practice, but we also have to work on it so that it grows. I also do that in my personal life. And I talk to my patients about that as well, like how to ritualize and systematize things so we have more creativity and more flow and more joy.
And when you started talking to them about these things, did you at all feel nervous, or how did you even, like, they're coming to you because you're a chiropractor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to assume that they assume they're getting cracked or adjusted.
Sure.
And all of a sudden you're like, hey, this thing called gratitude, we should journal about it, or let's set you up a morning routine. Like, how did you even start to integrate these types of conversations into your care?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I have like a specific moment, but I do know that, while the almighty and powerful chiropractic adjustment is really awesome at relieving neck pain and getting your range of motion and flexibility better, that's not the only thing that constitutes health. So I wanted to start bringing more of a holistic approach into care. And while I think that I can't imagine never not being adjusted, what I also know is that if the only thing I did was get adjusted and not exercise and not have a healthy mindset and not feel my brain and my body properly, I would also be much sicker and much less healthier than I am today. So I always tie things back to the neurophysiology of the brain and the mind, because for me, the two are this one and the same. Even like thoughts, when we actually look at, like when we look at brain scans, a thought is, we see the thought happening in the motor cortex. So the motor cortex is like movement, right? So if you're like doing like a bicep curl or something, like the motor cortex is like this descending pathway that tells you to, flex the bicep on the elbow or whatever. But thoughts also occur in the motor cortex and in the prefrontal cortex as well, which is technically part of the frontal lobe. So, for me, like, it's one and the same. So mindset is just as important as reducing the stress response in the, along the HPA axis or what have you.
Yeah, because I know for me too, in my business, what I sell to people is this framework to help them grow their businesses.
Right.
But the majority of my time is spent coaching them to get them out of their own way, to help them, feel confident, to have the right words to use. Like, almost, I would say 80% of my time when I'm actually dealing with my clients, whether it's like in the Facebook group or coaching calls, is mindset. It's all mindset. And it's not something I can necessarily sell, because that's nobody wants it, nor do they even realize it's a thing that they even have to overcome in order to get the result. And so, I don't know, I think maybe that's why a lot of health professionals were already maybe so stigmatized that if we came out with our quirks and our mindset and our woo-woo, although it's becoming a lot more prevalent now for sure, that maybe we would be judged. Like, I remember the first time that I posted about my tarot cards and how we use the tarot cards. Like, before we have team meetings, we pull cards just to be like, where should we focus our attention, and all of and someone had posted on my wall, maybe don't show that side of you, because perhaps people won't take you seriously. Perhaps people will think that you're basing your business decisions around the tarot cards. And I'm like, except I kind of am. So I don't know.
What's the problem with that?
Well, exactly. So I don't know. I don't know, because I've always been like that. And I know that you have also, but I know that for a lot of people, especially people maybe of certain backgrounds and cultures, that perhaps showing who they really are is really stigmatizing for them.
And there's a lot of shame around it as well, right? Yeah. So sometimes, like what you said there really just pinged something for me. I just wanted to share it. Sometimes we have to, give people, or sell people, as much as, I have no problem with the word selling, because we are all selling a service, right? But, selling people what they want, but giving them what they really need, right? So you were talking about, you sell people on like how to, do this online protocol, but what you end up giving them is what they really need is mindset work and helping them, get rid of their limiting beliefs about themselves or fears around the future or things like patterns and unconscious patterning that they've all been exposed to. So I think that that's true for all healthcare professionals. I think that we all, and this is, probably why, maybe our clinic is set apart from others, is we really dive deep into our own stuff. Sorry, I don't know if we're allowed.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Yeah, we dive into our own shit and we talk about it, and we do our own personal work, because that allows me to be fully present and to be able to meet the patient or the person, the client, whatever you want to, practice member, whatever you're calling them, meet them where they are. Mindset, like you were saying, is really, it's a hard sell because people don't think that they need it. People don't understand what it is, right? But you gotta like sneak it in there, right? Like you have to work on mindset. It's part of having a healthy, a part of our healing, because we all have stuff, right? Like we all have stuff from the past or relationships that went awry. We have, things people said to us that they shouldn't have, like experiences with our parents, what I like to call like the mothers, fathers, teachers, preachers, right? Like the people that we had growing up that imparted their own limiting beliefs on who we were or who we should be. So we all have that unconscious patterning and unconscious programming. Our jobs, I think as adults and as healthcare practitioners, is to find out who we really need to be, and to be absolutely fearless in this self, like becoming the best person that we can, this like self-actualized self, so that we can give more freely, fully, and more presently to our people.
Yeah, absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more. One of the phrases that I often say is, be the client that you want to have. And I think,
Yes. Yeah.
that, at least
Mhm.
I know this is true for me, my clients have always been a mirror for me, like in terms of I'm attracting the lessons.
Mhm.
And so it's always been a choice whether or not to dive deep into the lessons. And sometimes because I don't want to, I don't, if I'm
Mhm.
not in a place where like I want to just go there. But I believe that, especially when it comes to injecting who we are, I think a lot of the times the people, and I find this to be true, and I don't know if you'll agree, the people who fear melding like church and state, what I like to say, like their personality into their practice, it's because they're just not comfortable with themselves in that moment. And so they don't even know how to be, so they can't even inject the personality.
And they're afraid of being rejected too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have so many people that are, we are, and like neurologically, we're all like wired for connection, and we all want like the approval of other people. So I think that when there is a threat, if someone were to come up at me and say, you know what, you're super unprofessional, you come wearing these rings, these big earrings, and these like yoga pants to work, I think that that's super unprofessional. If I wasn't really comfortable with who I was, and I've done the work myself to become more of who I should be, that might be like, oh crap, I need to, come in and like be in the middle and not be the outlier or what have you. And I think healers in general, like we have to do the work ourselves in order to be able to heal other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were saying that, I really felt that, because I know for myself, for such a long period of time, and I'm still working on this too, it's like I always had this fear of being too much for people. Like
Yeah.
often to this day, people are like, still say to me, you're so intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
And now I've just learned to say thank you. Right. And just sort of be like, you're not my person. If
Right.
that's how you relate to me in this world, we're
Mm-hmm.
not meant to be together, like
Right.
in any capacity whatsoever. But I think a lot of us have these scripts or these beliefs about ourselves, for whatever reason. And so that's really stopping us from showing up in our practices and in our businesses to be able to be this like professional, this expert, this guru, this leader, to then lead other people.
And it's okay to be, I was saying to you in the pre-chat, I take my clinical diagnosis really effing seriously. I spend a lot of time poring over a file and thinking about a patient and thinking about how we can start moving the needle for them. But that doesn't mean that that's where I'm pigeonholed and that's the only person that I can be, is just the clinical robot, right? Like I can also create a walk-in sign that has Christopher Walken on it and has like a, quirky saying on it. And I can also play 80s music, and being a human being means that you're going to be complex and layered, and you're going to have preferences and whatnot. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I totally agree. And I know even for myself, like I can't spell. I can't spell to save my life. And I often don't spell check things. And I get a lot of comments about how I swear a lot and how it's very unprofessional and I have spelling errors, and no one should buy anything from me because I have spelling errors. And
They're not your people.
at first I was like, oh God, like that's horrible. That's so unprofessional. And now I'm just like, oh God, I'm unsubscribing you. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't even thank you. Bye. Right. Because that is just who I am. And it's taken obviously a long time to get there, and it's a lot of work, internally to be able to get there. But I think the more I've been able to share, and I assume this is for you too, the more you've been able to integrate who you really are at your most authentic level, that has propelled your practice forward.
Absolutely. And I can't tell you, Lori, how many times, I was actually having this conversation recently, how many times in my life people have told me in one way or another that I'm too smart. I shouldn't go into, like, I remember when I was in like grade 3, maybe grade 4, like all the girls at recess like surrounded me and was like, you're making us all look bad. You can't, and I was, answering all the questions in class, and I was like, and they're like, you can't do that. You're making us all look bad. And then I remember we were doing like a laps around the track, and I was like one of the faster runners, and then they kind of surrounded me at the end of that exercise and like totally bullied me, and like I went home that evening crying, and I've had all through my life, I had a chemistry teacher that told me, I'm too pretty to go into science. You hear like the dumbest stuff from people, and if I listened to them, if I was like, oh yeah, maybe I am too much, maybe I should tone it down a little bit, I wouldn't have the life that I have today. I wouldn't have made the choices that I've made in order to get here. If you look at we look at celebrities, if you look at health gurus, and the amount of no's that they have received, far outweighs the amount of yeses that they have. But they had this fundamental belief in who they were, the message that they had to share, and, how they could leave, their community or earth or whatever in a better place than how they left it. So I feel like, it's a disservice to humanity to not fully show up as who you are. And that doesn't mean that it's always going to be like unicorns and sparkles and rainbows, and it's going to be effortless. And of course it's going to be hard. That's kind of the paradox in life, right? Like the things that are, worth having are often the hardest to do, or else everybody would have them. Health, right? Like you can, like, if health was like super duper, like if being, an ideal weight was super duper easy, like everybody would have it. There'd be no need for chiropractors or naturopaths or whatever. But it's really important for us to wake up every day and move the needle in some way, change what the average day is for you, so that you can, leave this place a little bit better than how you left it.
Yeah. And I was listening to something this morning about how it's actually our responsibility to do the work, because that's what people are paying us for. Mm-hmm. We're not just getting paid to give diagnoses or, protocols or adjustments. We're actually being paid to go first, right? To do the work first, so that we can show up and lead by example.
And be able to hold space for someone who's a little bit further behind the path than you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And holding that space. So what are some of the books that you've read, or, whatever strategies that you've implemented? I know you do a tremendous amount of personal development work and mindset work. So if you can share some of that with us, that would be awesome.
Oh my goodness. I'm trying to look at my bookcase here and see which are my favorites. I would probably say as a start, like the one book that's had a massive impact on me is Miracle Morning, Hal Elrod. It's kind of an older book now, but it has completely changed my life. Like I started waking up like prior to reading that, I would kind of wake up like last minute and kind of rush off to work and all that. I really started taking the time in the morning to set myself up for the day. Tools of Titans, Tim Ferriss. I've read that book, I don't know, 10 times. And every time I get something new from it. Mindset is a really good one. Who's the author on Mindset? It's my white one. Where is she? Here, let me just pull it for you. Give me a second. This one.
Okay.
I don't know if that's like showing it backwards to you, but this is like if you want to like learn about mindset, this one. Start with it.
Well, we'll definitely link to all of these books that you're mentioning in the show notes for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can read books until you're 140, right? But those have been kind of the big influences for me in terms of daily rituals and habits, like Tools of Titan. I remember when I was reading it for the first time, I was like, damn, I'm spending a lot of money, because I would read a chapter and I would go buy whatever the expert was like talking about, acupressure mats or beet extract or like whatever it was. So every time I read like a new little bit of that book, I was like, spending more money and like experimenting on myself and seeing if it worked for me. So that's a really awesome one. And then like I was saying, Miracle Morning, loved it. Like how to set up your day for like maximum success.
Yeah. As soon as I switched my morning routine back in like 2012, it was like my entire life changed.
Yeah. And for creatives, like it can be really scary, right? It's like, oh, I'm so creative. I just can't like set to, but it actually, the more kind of regimented you are about like your morning ritual, if you have an afternoon ritual and an evening ritual, it actually creates more time for you to be creative, right? Like you get the necessary things, you set your brain up, you set your body up in the right way. And then you lay the foundation to be more creative, to be more to produce more, to engage more.
Structure gives you freedom.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Thank you so much for this and just for sharing about how you've been able to, set yourself apart in an industry that is pretty crowded, I would say.
Yeah.
Just by really being who you are and injecting all of the amazing things that you believe in. Where can people go to find out more about you?
Clinic practice is the Health Loft. So you can go to www.thehealthloft.ca. You can find me on Facebook, Stephanie Estima. I run a nutritional program called Keto Clean. So you can find me there, ketoclean.com, I believe.
We'll link to it anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll link to it, no problem. Yeah. Thanks so much for chatting with us. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk again soon. Have a good day.
Thank you for having me.